The hall was bright and full of people. Chairs lined up in perfect rows. Reporters clicked their cameras. Every seat was taken. Some guests were famous politicians. Others were top tech minds from around the world. They had come for a special event in New Delhi, where innovation and leadership would be celebrated on a global stage. In the middle row sat Sundar Pichai. His expression was calm. He looked around, quietly nodding at familiar faces. He was not here for attention. He was here to listen, to observe, to be a part of something meaningful. The event was not about him, or so he thought. The announcer stepped forward, voice firm but kind. "Please stand as we welcome the Honorable Prime Minister Modi ji." Every chair moved, every person rose. The room stood tall like a wave of respect. A warm silence fell. All eyes turned toward the large wooden doors, except for one person. Sundar Pichai stayed seated. He was not being disrespectful. He was looking down at something in his hand. A tiny photo, worn at the edges. His mother's picture. She had passed away 3 weeks ago. He had carried her photo with him ever since. This was the first major event he had attended since her death. As Modi ji entered the hall, he noticed something different. Rows of standing people, except one man. His security team tensed. But Modi ji held up his hand. He walked calmly. Not toward the stage, not toward the front row. He walked directly toward the man who had not stood up. Cameras zoomed in. Whispers filled the air. Some thought Sundar had made a mistake. Others thought this was about to become a problem. But no one expected what happened next. Modi ji reached Sundar, who looked up, surprised. The Prime Minister smiled softly and said, "You do not need to stand. I know who you're standing for in your heart." A moment of silence followed. Sundar stood slowly, his eyes shining with emotion. Modi ji reached out and gently touched the photo in Sundar's hand. "She raised you with dignity," Modi ji said, "and she would be proud of the man you are." Today, the room went still. The air felt heavy with emotion. Even the clicking cameras paused. This was not just a public gesture. It was a quiet understanding between two men who knew what it meant to carry personal pain in public spaces. The announcer, unsure what to say, simply bowed his head. Modi ji then turned to the crowd. "True strength is not always in standing," he said. "Sometimes it is in sitting with your memories." The audience listened in deep silence. Some lowered their eyes. Some wiped away tears. Modi ji took the stage. But before he began his speech, he said one more thing. Respect is not measured by motion. It is measured by meaning. People clapped not out of habit, but from a place deep within. The moment had shifted the tone of the entire event. And Sundar, he sat back down, quietly folding the photo. Holding it close to his chest. He had not planned to be the center of attention, but sometimes life chooses you to carry a message. And this time, it had chosen him. This was only the beginning. After the event ended, people left the hall in silence. Not the awkward kind of silence. It was thoughtful, warm, heavy with meaning. Something had changed in them. One moment, one sentence, had shown them something more powerful than any speech. Sundar Pichai stayed seated for a while. The room was almost empty. Now, he looked at the stage where Modi ji had spoken with grace and humility. But Sundar's mind was not on the stage. It was still on the photo folded in his hand. He thought of his mother. Her name was Lakshmi. She had never been on a stage, never had cameras around her, never met world leaders. But to Sundar, she had always been the strongest person in every room. She raised him in a small two-room house in Chennai. His father worked long hours, fixing electrical parts. His mother managed the home and read books with him every night. They had no internet, no air conditioning, but they had stories, dreams, and the will to work hard. Sundar remembered a moment, clearly. He was 12. His shoes were torn. A school event was coming. He told his mother he wouldn't go. Why not? She asked gently. He looked down and said, because they'll see my shoes. His mother said nothing at first. Then she smiled, lifted his chin, and said, they'll see your eyes, not your shoes. Look up, my boy. She stitched his shoes. That night, not with fancy thread, but with care. The next day, he went to the event, and he won a medal for science that year. Sundar smiled softly at the memory. That small voice, filled with quiet power, had shaped the man he became, back in the present. Footsteps echoed in the hall. A soft voice spoke behind him. You have a moment, Mr. Pichai? He turned. It was an older woman, draped in a simple blue sari. Her hands held a notepad and a microphone. I'm Meera, she said, a journalist. May I ask about what happened today? Sundar hesitated, then he nodded. They sat across from each other in the corner of the hall. No lights, no cameras, just two people and a story. Why didn't you stand? She asked, her tone respectful. Sundar looked at her calmly. Because I was already standing, in a way, he said. I was holding my mother's photo. I was thinking of her. You didn't expect Modi ji to come to you, did you? No, Sundar said quietly. I was surprised. How did it feel? Sundar thought for a long time. Then he said it felt like someone saw the invisible. Everyone talks about power, success, fame. But he saw my silence. That is rare. Meera scribbled a few notes. Can I share this in my article? She asked. Sundar nodded, but then added something. Please mention her name, Lakshmi. People should know that name. Meera smiled. I will. As she walked away, Sundar sat back. The day had not started with a plan, but something bigger had unfolded. He pulled out his phone and opened a draft email he had written to himself weeks ago. It was a letter to his mother. He had never sent it, just written it to feel closer to her. Now, he opened it and began typing again. Dear Amma, he wrote. Today, something happened that reminded me of you. Not just because I had your photo in my hand, but because someone reminded me what you taught me. To sit with meaning, to speak with silence, to hold my ground when the world watches. I hope you were watching too. I think you were. He paused, then typed one more line. I miss you. He saved the draft again. Just then, his phone buzzed. A message from a name he never expected. It said, Mr. Pichai, this is the office of the Prime Minister. Modi ji wishes to meet you tomorrow, privately. Sundar stared at the screen. His heart beat louder. What could this meeting be about? He had no idea, but he knew one thing. His mother would have smiled. The next morning was quiet, but Sundar Pichai's heart was not. He sat in the back seat of a black car, being driven through the wide, tree-lined roads of New Delhi. Birds flew past the windows. The city moved on like any other day. But for Sundar, something was different. He held the same photo of his mother in his hand, just like yesterday. The car passed security and entered the Prime Minister's residence. A soft-spoken aide greeted him at the gate and walked him inside. The building was simple, yet filled with quiet strength. Not flashy, not loud. It felt like a place where big decisions were made with calm minds. They stopped outside a wooden door. He is waiting for you, the aide said gently. Sundar took a slow breath and walked in. Modi ji was sitting at a wooden table with 2 cups of chai already poured. He looked up with a smile, warm and sincere. Please, he said, come join me. Sundar sat down across from him. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The room was filled with the soft aroma of chai and something deeper. Respect. Modi ji picked up his cup and took a sip. I wanted to thank you, he said quietly. Sundar looked confused. Me? But you're the one who came to me. Modi ji nodded. Double quotes, yes. And I came because sometimes, even the tallest trees need to stop and notice the quiet flowers beneath them. Yesterday, the world saw a leader on stage, but I saw a son in the crowd. Sundar felt a lump in his throat. Modi ji continued. I lost my mother not long ago too, he said, and I know what it feels like. The weight, the silence, the strength we must carry in front of others. Sundar nodded slowly. Thank you, he whispered. I wasn't trying to make a statement. I just needed a moment with her. And that, said Modi ji, was the most powerful statement of all. They sat in silence for a while, sipping chai. Then Modi ji leaned forward and asked a question Sundar didn't expect. How would you feel about honoring her, not just privately, but publicly? Sundar looked up, unsure what that meant. Modi ji smiled. Next month, we are launching a new national program. It will support young students in rural areas, those who dream big, but have little. I want to name the program after your mother. The Lakshmi Initiative. Would you accept? Sundar blinked, tears welled in his eyes, but he held them back. I don't know what to say, he whispered. Say yes, Modi ji said kindly, and let her story reach every corner of this country. Sundar nodded. Yes, I would be honored. Good, Modi ji said, because this country needs to remember people like her, quiet mothers with loud dreams. Women who raise sons with books instead of wealth, who stitch shoes instead of seeking credit. Those are the real builders of India. Sundar looked down at the photo in his hand. He saw his mother's gentle smile. He imagined her laughing, her hand on his shoulder. She would have never believed this, he said softly. Modi ji smiled, but she made it happen. They finished their chai. As Sundar stood to leave, Modi ji said one final thing. There's one more event next month. A gathering of youth leaders and tech students from across India. I'd like you to speak. Not as the CEO of a global company, but as the son of Lakshmi. Sundar paused, then he said, I'll do it, and I'll tell them about the day I didn't stand and how it changed everything. They shook hands, not like leaders, like brothers in grief and gratitude. Outside, the sky was a soft blue. The trees swayed gently in the wind, and inside Sundar's heart, something settled. This was not just about technology, not just about fame or success. It was about a woman who never left her small home, but whose name was about to light a path for thousands of others. Weeks passed quickly. The posters were up. The stage was built. The event was named the Lakshmi Initiative Youth Summit, and thousands of students had arrived from every state in India. Some came from far-off villages, traveling in buses through the night. Some wore uniforms with missing buttons. Others held notebooks worn from use. But all of them carried one thing: hope. The auditorium was massive. Banners with simple words hung on the walls. Dream deeply. Rise quietly. Walk humbly. Everyone knew the story now. Not just about Sundar Pichai, not just about Modi ji. They knew about Lakshmi, the mother who stitched torn shoes, who raised a quiet boy who would one day lead one of the biggest companies in the world, who had never stood on a stage but had taught her son how to stand for something. The crowd waited with anticipation. The announcer came up and spoke softly. Today, we begin something beautiful. Not just a program, not just a speech. We begin a new memory. Then he paused. Please welcome Sundar Pichai. The applause started small, then it grew. But Sundar didn't walk out in a suit. He came out in a simple white shirt and gray pants. He wasn't here as a CEO. He was here as a son. He took a deep breath and stepped up to the microphone. His voice was calm, slow, honest. I want to tell you a story, he said. Not about business, not about the internet, but about a woman who never owned a computer, but taught me everything. The room became quiet. My mother's name was Lakshmi. She didn't go to big schools. She didn't have a big job, but every night she read to me. She asked about my dreams. And when my shoes broke, she didn't cry. She stitched them. And when I said I wouldn't go to school, she said, they'll see your eyes, not your shoes. He looked around the hall. I didn't become who I am because of money or luck. I became who I am because of belief. Hers. He paused and held up the photo. This is her. And this initiative is in her name. But it's also in your name. For every student who is doubted, for every parent who struggles, for every dream that feels too big for its village. Students sat forward in their chairs. Some had tears in their eyes. You are not small, he said. You are seeds, and seeds only look small before they grow. The crowd began clapping, slowly, deeply. Don't wait for someone to notice you. Just start walking. One step, one book, one question. And when the world asks who you are, say your name, say your story. It matters. The lights shifted. The air was charged. Then Sundar smiled gently and ended with, I didn't stand that day because I was grieving, but today, I stand for her. And for you. The room exploded with applause, not just polite applause, real, thunderous, emotional applause. After the speech, students rushed forward. They didn't ask for autographs. They asked questions. How did you study in a noisy house? How did you stay hopeful when things were hard? What should I do if my family says dreams are silly? Sundar answered each one with honesty and care. He stayed for hours, long after cameras were off, long after the main lights had dimmed. He shook every hand, listened to every voice, and told every student the same thing. You are not alone. One girl came forward last. She was holding a stitched pair of shoes in her hands. She looked shy but determined. My mother fixed these, she said. I almost didn't come today, but I remembered your story. Sundar knelt down to her level. Then she's a hero, he whispered. Just like mine. He took out a pen and signed the inside of the shoe, not as a celebrity, but as someone who understood. Outside the auditorium, night had fallen, but inside, something had begun to rise. The Lakshmi initiative was no longer just a program, it was a movement. And Sundar. He wasn't just a guest speaker. He had become a quiet guide for a generation. News of the Lakshmi initiative spread quickly, not because of ads or loud campaigns, but because of hearts. Villages that had never hosted events before now held evening gatherings under banyan trees. Teachers read Sundar's speech aloud to students, sitting on mats. Parents, especially mothers, listened carefully. They saw themselves in Lakshmi, quiet, steady, unseen, but powerful. In one dusty village in Madhya Pradesh, a boy named Arjun sat in front of a black and white television. The signal was weak. The picture flickered, but his eyes never moved. He watched Sundar's speech again on a local news repeat. After it ended, he whispered to his mother, Ma, we can stitch my shoes too. She smiled and nodded, not with pity but with pride. In a fishing village in Kerala, a girl named Anitha tore pages from old newspapers and folded them into practice notebooks. She had never seen the inside of a real school lab, but after hearing Sundar's story, she started building her own models out of cardboard and shells. In a mining town in Jharkhand, a teacher added a new name to the chalkboard every morning, a Lakshmi. Every day, the students were asked to write what they'd do in her honor. Some said, build an app. Some said, become a teacher. Some said, never forget my mother. Slowly, the name became more than a memory. It became a symbol. Lakshmi began to mean strength in silence. Lakshmi began to mean belief when no one else sees you. Meanwhile, Sundar was invited to more schools, colleges, and local youth forums. But he made a special request he didn't want stages or fancy lights. He wanted round tables, classroom floors, dusty courtyards. He wanted to sit with students, not above them. In one school, he was sitting cross-legged on the floor with 20 students. A boy raised his hand and asked, Sir, do you ever feel like giving up? Sundar paused, then said, Yes, many times. But giving up is not the same as resting. Sometimes I pause. Sometimes I cry. Sometimes I even doubt myself. But I don't give up, because the dream doesn't stop needing me. The boy nodded, his eyes filled with quiet understanding. What about fear? Another girl asked. Fear means you care, Sundar replied. Use it as fuel, but don't let it drive. That night, Sundar sat alone in a guest house provided by a village school. It was small and clean. No television, no air conditioning. Just the hum of a ceiling fan and the distant sounds of crickets. He opened his laptop and began to write a journal entry. Dear Amma, today I met students who have never seen a computer up close, but they have ideas that can change the world. They don't need me to give them power. They need me to remind them they already have it. Your name has become something I never expected. Not just a memory, but a bridge between past and future. Between village and world. He stopped and smiled. You stitched shoes. Now they're walking across the nation. The next morning, he received a message from Modi Ji's office again, but this one was different. Modi Ji would like to attend the next Lakshmi initiative event in person. He wishes to come not as a speaker, but as a listener. Sundar read the message twice. A national leader, wishing to come. To listen, it was humbling, and it was powerful. Plans were made quickly. The next event was scheduled in a small schoolyard in Bihar. It was simple, with just a blue tarp over bamboo poles. But the message was clear: no grand stages, no fancy banners, just stories, dreams, and dignity. And this time, the world would be watching. The sun rose gently over the fields of Bihar. The small schoolyard buzzed with quiet excitement. Children swept the grounds. Teachers arranged plastic chairs under the tarp. Local women cooked simple meals behind the building. Reporters had gathered, but stayed respectfully in the background. This was not a show. This was a story. And then, the car arrived. Modi Ji stepped out not in a grand convoy, but in a single white car, no loud sirens. He wore a simple kurta and smiled at the children as he walked in. They folded their hands. He folded his back. The villagers stood to greet him, but he surprised them. Please, he said kindly, sit. Today, we all sit together. And then, the crowd turned toward another car. From it stepped Sundar Pichai. This time, he carried nothing but a stack of letters from students across India who had written to thank his mother, Lakshmi. They walked to the front together, but instead of taking seats on stage, both men sat on the ground with the students. The event began. Children from villages across the region shared stories. A girl named Sita talked about how her mother had sold her only sari to buy her exam fee. A boy named Irfan described building a solar lamp from broken toys so he could study at night. Every story carried the same heartbeat: hope in hard places. After the last child spoke, the announcer looked at the two guests. Modi Ji, Sundar, sir, would you like to share a few words? Modi Ji stood first. His voice was calm, steady. Today, we sit on the same soil that mothers like Lakshmi walked on. We sit where dreams are born, not in marble halls, but in small homes with big hearts. He looked around the crowd. You don't need to become prime minister to serve your nation. You don't need to become a CEO to change the world. You only need to carry kindness, to listen, to lift one another. Then he looked at Sundar and said, today, you didn't just bring your mother's name forward. You brought forward a generation. The crowd clapped deep, slow claps. Sundar stood. Next, he held the letters gently. I've read these, he said softly, and every line reminds me of her. Not because they're about technology or success, but because they're about love, sacrifice, silent strength. He paused. My mother would have never imagined this, but I think she always believed something good would come from love, and maybe that's all we ever need to believe. He handed the letters to a teacher nearby and said, "Keep them. Let your students read them. Let them know what strength sounds like." As the event came to a close, the two men stood side by side, but before leaving, Sundar did one last thing. He walked to a small tree planted behind the school. It was newly planted, just a sapling. He knelt down, scooped some soil in his hand, and gently pressed it around the base. A plaque beside the tree read, "In honor of Lakshmi and all quiet heroes of India." Modi ji joined him, placing his hand on the soil to dot. The cameras caught the moment, but they did not define it. What defined it was the silence that followed, a silence full of meaning. That night, news channels across India showed the image, two powerful men, kneeling before a tree. But the headlines said more than just names. They said, "A mother's love becomes a nation's light. When leaders sit with children, the country stands taller. Lakshmi lives in every child who dares to dream." And in homes from Kashmir to Kanyakumari, mothers told their children the story, not of a man who stood, but of a son who sat, and a nation that listened. Schools across India now had a name painted above their doors: Lakshmi Corner. It was a simple space, a reading mat, a shelf of books, a wall with dreams written in chalk. No fancy computers, no expensive decor, but it was sacred. It was where stories began, where children whispered their wishes into notebooks and believed someone was listening. The Lakshmi initiative had grown beyond expectation, but Sundar Pichai remained unchanged. He still visited villages quietly. He still carried the folded photo of his mother. He still reminded students, "You are not less. You are rising." Then one day, an invitation arrived, not from a village, but from the Indian Space Research Organization. They had been following the journey. They had read the letters, heard the speeches, watched the soil ceremony. Now, they had a request. "We are launching a new satellite program to connect remote schools across the nation with educational resources. We would like to name the satellite Lakshmi." Sundar sat in silence when he read it. He didn't cry, but he felt something shift inside him, something settle. He flew to the launch center weeks later. The room was full of engineers, scientists, students from far corners of India, and mothers holding their children's hands. Modi ji was there too, this time not as a guest, but simply as a witness. The screen counted down, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And then, the rocket rose. Silent, powerful, graceful. On board was a small plaque. It read, "In memory of Lakshmi, and every mother who raised a dream in silence." As the rocket climbed into the sky, people watched with hands over their hearts. A girl whispered, "That's our story." Up there, a boy beside her said, "That's our Uma." And Sundar, he didn't look up at first. He looked down at the photo in his hand, and he whispered, "You never needed to reach the stars. You already lit the path." Later that evening, sitting beside a fire with local children, he told one final story. "Do you know why stars shine?" They shook their heads, "Because they burn quietly for others. Just like our mothers. They don't ask to be seen, but they guide us, always." A girl raised her hand. "Will Lakshmi ever fall from the sky?" Sundar smiled gently. "No," he said. "She rose to remind you that you can too." And in that simple schoolyard, under an open sky, surrounded by laughter and dusty feet, a name became something eternal, not because it was spoken by the powerful, but because it was carried in the hearts of the humble. Laksham, not just a mother, a movement, a memory, a light. And as the fire cracked softly in the dark, one boy wrote on the dirt with his finger, "I will make her proud too."